Hey, my fifth graders. It is Mrs. Bierman here, and hopefully if you are watching this, you have already looked at our fifth grade Google slideshow that shows you some information about making clay bird cups. If you picked up your supplies, that should have happened Monday, the 14th. If you're watching this live, that's tomorrow. In your materials, you would have seen a bag of clay as well as a pointy tool, a wooden pointy tool, which I don't have here at my house, but I do have a toothpick, so a toothpick will work just fine. And those are the only things that you really need for this clay project. So I'm going to give you real quick information about making this bird cup. First, you need to come up with a bird idea. So look at those slides and figure out which kind of bird you like, whether it's a bluebird or a cardinal or I don't know, a seagull. You can look up something all on your own if you'd like to. But go ahead and think about what you're going to make, because that might change the shape of the beak or the feet, or if it has a crown feather on there, you decide that for yourself. So once you have your idea in mind, you're going to take your piece of clay, and I would take off a hunk. This is going to be enough for the beak, the feet, the tail, or not the tail feather, the crown feather as well, and then any other detail. So you do need to make sure you have enough of it. So I would say at least the size of your thumb, if not a little more. Okay, so I'm going to take this a little more off. The piece of clay I have here at home is smaller than what I sent home with you. I should have given you, or you should have plenty of clay. If you decide to do this with Model Magic or Play-Doh or anything, that is 100% fine. If you're working with the clay that I gave you, it is the stuff that needs to be fired. You can't do that in an oven at your own house. You would need to bring that back to school for me to put in our special oven called a kiln. You're more than welcome to have a grown-up drop that off for you at any time, as long as you have it labeled with your name. So if you want to do exactly what we're doing in school, you will need to bring it to school to be fired, and then I will send glaze home with you so you can waterproof it and you can turn it into a cup that is actually functional. Okay, so you should have watched the first video that I posted in the Google Classroom. It was an art with Trista, and it was on how to make a pinch pot. So that's what I'm starting with. I'm starting with this little pinch pot, this little bowl. And from there, I'm going to turn it into my cup shape. So again, I don't have quite as much clay as you all do at home. So mine's going to look a little bit smaller than yours. But once I have the shape that I want, then I'm ready to attach. So I'm looking at my little cup shape. I am going to give it a little tap on all the sides. If you can see here, I'm working on a piece of wax paper. You certainly don't have to. You do need a smooth surface, so I'm just working on my kitchen countertop. My actual dining room table has grooves in it, so I didn't want to use that. Just so I didn't get any of those indents into my clay. But just to protect your space, you can put down a piece of wax paper. You can put down a towel. You can actually, the plastic bag that I put your clay in, you can go ahead and just work on top of that. Any of those things will work. And the nice thing about clay is that it comes out really easily. It's nothing that will stain. If it's on top of the table, it will just wipe up really easily. It might leave like a chalky residue, but it should be no problem at all. Okay. So anyway, I'm taking a little bit of water here and I'm just smoothing out my actual cup shape so it is exactly how I would like that. Okay, so I'm going to take some of my extra clay and I'm going to go ahead and form a little beak. Most of the time when I'm trying to create any kind of shape, I like to start with a ball or a sphere. Okay, once I have that sphere shape, I can then turn it really into any shape that I want. I can hit it on the table and I can turn it into a little cube. I can roll it in my finger and turn it into a cone shape. And that's what I'm going for. I'm going for an actual cone shape, like a beak, like a pointed beak. So I'm just rolling it. I have that pointed end there, but I am going to then cut it where I think I need it. And I have my little beak shape. Okay, so I'm going to look at my cup and I'm going to figure out, well, where do I want that little beak? And is it too long or is it too short? And I'm going to go from there. So I'm actually going to tap mine down a little bit so it's a little bit shorter, but you'll notice I do have a flat side. So you can do a lot of things to score. We need to remember the 3 S's: scoring, which is scratching; slip, which is adding water to clay, and that's the glue, that's what holds it together; and then squish. So to score or to scratch, I can take my pointy tool or my toothpick, and I can just create these dashes in the clay, and then I can come through and I can go the other direction as well. It just roughs it up. So I'm cross-hatching in my clay. I can do the same thing right here wherever I want to attach it, or I can use an old toothbrush and I can rough it up that way as well. I don't know if you can see that. It's harder to do that with smaller areas, but as I rough it up, it's also getting it wet because I've dipped the old toothbrush in some water. So now I'm adding the water to the clay, and I did that with a toothbrush, but you can just do a little tap, tap, tap on there. And then I'm going to put the 2 rough areas together and I'm going to squish that together. I don't know how well I can see that. So I've squished, I can put a finger behind here to support it and I can squish that on there. And that beak is now glued onto the other piece. So it's going to become permanent as it dries. There's my little beak. Okay. Once I'm finished with that, I'm going to add some eyeballs onto there. I'm going to just roll my little eyeballs into the clay. I'm going to take my wet toothbrush. I'm going to try to rough up one side there. And then I'm going to actually make an indent with the other end of my toothbrush. And then I'm going to rough that little area up real lightly. And then I'm going to find my 2 rough areas and I'm going to squish those together. So I've got my little bird eye. I'm going to do that one more time. I probably should have made my 2 little eyes at the same time to ensure that they were the same size. Hey girls, you might want to grab a cup of water just to smooth your clay out too. My 2 daughters are working with clay as well. Anyway, I'm going to do the same thing with my second eye. I'm going to rough that up with my toothbrush, or I can rough it up with my toothpick and rough it up here. Add some water, that's my glue, the slip, and then I'm going to squish it in there. So I've got my 2 little birdie eyes. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for the crown feather. It's up to you where you want that to be. I'm not going to go through all of this, but if you want your little bird's crown feather to come up out of the mug, you could do 3 little ones. You can do 1 here. What I would suggest is scoring that, roughing that up. Wherever it attaches to my cup, I'm going to rough that up as well. Can you see that that's, it's damp. There's some water on there. And then I'm going to attach the 2 roughed up edges together. Now you can see that that is protruding from my cup. It doesn't look like one solid piece. So I would like that to look smooth. So I'm going to just take my fingers and I'm going to smooth that crown feather on there so it all becomes unified, all attached together, just like that. So then when I look at it from this angle, it looks like the little crown feather sticking up. So I'm going to do the same thing for the little feetsies. And then you can add more if you have, I took off too much clay. So if you have more clay, you could add little wings. You can add your little feet. You could add a little tail that comes up from the bottom. That's completely up to you. Now at this point, you probably won't be able to tell what kind of bird this is. But once I fire this in the kiln and then I come back and I paint it. So I think I'm going to I'll probably do a bluebird. So I'm going to come back with some orange paint or some orange glaze here on its belly. I'll glaze the rest of it blue, the eyes black, the beak a different color, maybe orange or yellow. I'm going to look at a bluebird picture to really decide what I want to do. So that's about it. I would probably very carefully, when you're done forming this, well, number one, I would put my initials with my toothpick or my scratchy tool. I would put my initials in the bottom of the cup or in the bottom of the mug. And then you could set this out to dry. It might dry very quickly depending on how hot or cool your home is. But what I would recommend is just loosely putting it back in your Ziploc baggie, not even sealing your bag, but just letting it dry out slowly. And that will help prevent any cracks that may form as the clay is drying. Okay, so when you're done with that, you should have a cute little bird cup. Hopefully yours is a little taller, a little bigger than mine. And you might even be able to use it. Okay, hope you had fun working with clay. I think it's so exciting that we're starting with clay this year. Send it in if you want it fired, and I will send you home with some glazes. And if you would rather not do that, that's fine. You can let this clay dry, and then you can paint it with any sort of permanent craft paint. You just find like the little bottles at Walmart or whatever. You can paint it that way if you would rather and not have to stop in at school for any reason. I would let it dry for 5 days or so. So it's all the liquid and moisture is out of your clay. Okay, so have fun doing that, and I will post again for another project. All right, bye boys and girls. See you soon, hopefully.